on the show.
And welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another edition of the Dawg Talk podcast. I'm your host, Harris Arena, alongside me, co-hosts Dan Kiley, Kobe Piers, back here with episode 142 of the Dawg Talk. Guys, we have a loaded show. The show is so loaded that we spent 5 minutes of when we were supposed to be live talking about things we're going to talk about on the show today. That is how loaded the show is today. We have a lot to get to in a rather short span of time. I'm assuming this one will be probably over an hour today. I think I think the last maybe like we're on a 4 or 5 show streak right now of hitting that over the hour mark, and it's all great shows. This is what we talked about. I believe it was at the last show. We aren't sitting here and pausing and kind of hitting the same points. We're moving, constantly moving, and that's what I like about what we're doing here when we go long. I think Dan and I have talked about it on the show before about in terms of, hey, we want it condensed. But right now, it's at that point in the year where we're like, hey, as long as we're moving along, as long as we're adding something to the conversation, we'll go however long it takes. Shout out to the cliche there over there. I think every football coach uses there. Dan Kiley, Kobe, welcome in. I hope y'all have had a wonderful Christmas. I hope y'all are enjoying the final few days of 2024 as we approach the new year, which will kick off with yet again another Georgia football game. Great way to acknowledge, to bring in the new year. Before we dive into our hot topic, yes, it is a hot topic today, not hot topics. We have a very specific hot topic that we'll hit to today. I do want to extend our prayers and condolences to the Jimmy Carter family. The former president passed away today. I believe he was 100 years old, had been around, for a long time, a staple over there in the Atlanta, Georgia space, contributed so much, not only the state of Georgia, but the country itself. So on behalf of the Top Talk podcast, we extend our prayers and condolences to that family. Gentlemen, from talking about a man that gave his life to this country, let's talk about to a topic of people who give to the university, give to the program that is Georgia football. We're talking about the category of damn good dogs. This is controversial. I think about once a year, we see people argue what makes a damn good dog. So today's hot topic will be exactly that. What qualifications do y'all see to be a damn good dog?
I'm going to let Kobe go first because this is something I'm passionate about, and I want to get his thoughts out of the way before I cook.
Ooh. Yeah, I think that we kind of talked about it before the show, just to kind of like preface it for each other. But I think that I'm definitely one of those people that there are levels within being a DGD. I mean, they're the untouchable guys that have damn good dog status. That it's really something that you think about when you think about some of the Georgia greats. It's people that the fans loved. It's somebody that, did things the right way, the Georgia way while they were here. And it's somebody that, maybe they weren't even the best player on the field, but you just love to watch them play. They brought a smile to your face. They've given back to the university. They've returned to Athens a couple of times. They've seen games in Sanford. They brought their families back. They talk about Georgia in the NFL. That one of my biggest pet peeves, I never played a snap in the NFL. I'll never play a snap in the NFL, so I can't understand any of it. But for whatever reason, one of my biggest pet peeves is on like Sunday Night Football, Monday Night Football, when they do the headshots and they go, Kobe Piers, and then instead of saying the University of Georgia, they're like, William and Young High School or, HW Middle School. It's like, just get up there, let's see your head. Tell me you played at Georgia or the Ohio State University or Louisiana State University, whatever. Let's move on. But I think as far as the DGDs go, I think there are a lot more of them out there than maybe some of the older generations like Dan is going to tell you.
That's exactly right. And my biggest pet peeve is this new era of people, and they want to put DGD on everything. Everybody's the greatest. They want to be best friends with all the athletes. They don't ever want to say anything negative. They don't want to criticize. And everybody's a damn good dog. No, everybody is not a damn good dog. And, this is a conversation that held us over, and that's why we didn't start on time, is because I'm very passionate about this. And yes, it was prompted by Carson Beck saying he's going to go to the pro. Immediately, everybody says, damn good dog. Why? Why is he a damn good dog? What has he done? What makes you believe he's going to come back and donate to the University of Georgia, spend time at the University of Georgia? He's going to be Georgia. No, like for me, it's a damn good dog is a guy who gave everything he had to the University of Georgia while he was here and continues to give everything to the University of Georgia now that they're gone. A perfect example of this, whether you like him or not, is Buck Bellew. Buck Bellew was a national championship winning quarterback at the University of Georgia. He has made his entire life and persona about being the quarterback of the University of Georgia in a national championship team. He has had a very successful radio career in Atlanta for going on 40 years. And part of the reason he got that gig is specifically because he is a Georgia quarterback. He comes back to the University of Georgia. He does free quarterback clinics. He is, if I'm not mistaken, he was on the board. If he's not on the board of the alumni, he's one of Kirby's guys that he goes to. Like Buck Bellew is what a damn good dog is. A guy like Herschel Walker. Herschel Walker has made his entire life about the University of Georgia. He gives back. He speaks highly of the University of Georgia. Never has anything bad to say about Georgia. Supports Georgia at all times. Herschel Walker, damn good dog. Now, it's easy to say that those two are, really, really good guys, okay? Well, only old guys can be damn good dogs. That's not necessarily true. Look at a guy like Tate Ratledge. Tate Ratledge loves the University of Georgia. He loves everything about Georgia. He hypes up Georgia. There is not a bone in my body that believes the minute that Tate Ratledge leaves, and whenever he's done doing whatever he's doing, or even while he's doing that, he is going to love on the University of Georgia. If somebody has something to say about Georgia, he will defend Georgia. He will hype up Georgia. He will protect the G. And then whenever he's done doing whatever he's going to do, I guarantee you he makes his way back to Athens and promotes and supports Georgia the rest of his life. That's what I'm talking about. Those guys are damn good dogs. Nick Chubb, Sony Michel, damn good dogs. Kobe pointed out, my favorite Bulldog of all time, love you, Todd Gurley, probably not a damn good dog. Great player. And I think that's the separation that everybody doesn't want to give is you can be an absolutely fantastic Georgia football player, but not necessarily a damn good dog. But that doesn't mean we don't love you and you're not a great player. It just means you don't fall into that category. And I think that's where Kobe talks about levels. So, Harrison, I've gone on long enough about why I get frustrated by the damn good dog. What is your take on the damn good dog?
From what I gather, Dan wants this to be the most exclusive society here. Not just country club society. He wants this to be as exclusive as like the U.S. President's Club, the former President's Club. And I see a lot of the points. I actually probably agree with almost all the points you make. In that sense. I do think, as Kobe and you have said, there's levels to this. There is. There's great players, all-time players, and then there are those who go well and beyond what we, well and beyond just, hey, I played at Georgia and that's it. I don't want to get into the specific case of whether this guy's DG or this guy's DG, because this ain't first take. We don't debate, that status. But, hey, I think y'all both make great points here in terms of where I stand on it. I do think it's, I don't know. I get it. Like, there are people like Dan said, and Kobe said, Todd Gurley, great player, phenomenal player. Maybe not always out there front of the line like a guy like Aaron Murray is in terms of repping Georgia, supporting Georgia. I think Keith Marshall, his teammate, his running back duo, Keith Marshall helps run the Players Lounge. He's maybe not a name I hear thrown around with DGD a lot, but probably needs to be, just considering what he does for the University of Georgia on and off the field. I do think there's a distinction. And as Dan said, just because somebody says you're not DGD doesn't mean you're not loved or you're not, liked among Georgia fans. They always, Georgia fans will always support you if you did good by the University of Georgia. I think that goes without saying. Gentlemen, I have a fun segment in here, and it came by the request of Dan. Dan read my mind, or actually, excuse me. We'll get to that in a moment. I requested this one for Dan because you go on social media right now, and everybody's talking about two all-time dogs, damn good dogs. Maybe I'll let Dan answer that one in terms of Ladd McConkey and Brock Bowers. Both lighting it up in the NFL. And Dan, if there's a narrative that's been around this Georgia football program for the last 10 years, it is Georgia doesn't develop NFL playmakers, NFL receivers / tight ends. So I'm going to let you break down the fourth wall right here. And Dan's rant today, by my request, is on Brock Bowers and Ladd McConkey.
I think this is a very topical given. Oh, I'm not muted. Why do you look at me that way? I was off to a good start, too. Damn you, Harrison.
Wait.
I
don't even know how I looked at him.
All right. It's very topical because today, Brock Bowers broke the Mike Ditka's record that stood for, was it 61 years, if I'm not mistaken? 61 years, Mike Ditka's record for the all-time rookie season for a tight end. Not only that, he's over 100 catches, so he blew that one out of the water. But now you have Ladd McConkey and Brock Bowers over 1,000 yards, Bowers over 100 receptions. And also keep in mind that Bowers is doing this with horrible quarterback play and very limited weapons around him. No running game to speak of. So he's absolutely dominating at a different level. If you remember the conversation, and we understand, we get it, okay? So we're not like trying to hammer it home, but college football season, build up, NFL draft, tear down, because, they're trying to get, for as cheap as they can and as late as they can. We get it. We understand the process. But Ladd McConkey, too short, too slow, not fast enough, got hurt way too much at Georgia. Georgia doesn't develop wide receivers, and he is arguably one of the fastest, quickest, most reliable targets in the NFL as a rookie. And then you have Brock Bowers. They showed a picture of him next to Gronk, and he was tiny. I mean, he was absolutely microscopic standing next to Gronk. But, I mean, who is it? Gronk is 6'7", 280 pounds. I mean, the guy is not a human. He's an alien. Probably, listen, I don't think there's probably, I'm not going to even preface it with some fucking bullshit. Gronk is the best tight end of all time. There's not anybody even remotely close to what he was. He was an absolute machine. It'll be hard to ever be on that level of Gronk. Now, the one thing that held Gronk back was injuries. He got hurt. He got beat up pretty quick. Kelsey is incredible. I'm not trying to take anything away from Travis Kelsey. Incredible tight end. But you have guys like Gronk that are coming out now, what is it? What would be probably 7/8 way through the season, and we're almost right here at the very end of the season. You got Gronk going, man. What he's doing as a rookie is absolutely incredible. And, was it 2 weeks ago? I think Gronk said, what show is he on? Is it the CBS or whatever he's on? He's like, man, he's like, this guy's going to be as good as I was, if not better. I mean, that's nice for somebody to say that or whatever. But if you watched his reaction and you listen to the way he's talking about him, I think he actually kind of believes that to be true. I don't know if he ever gets there, and that's not an argument that we need to have in year one, okay? He's got a long way to go to get to the Travis Kelsey or Gronk. But the level of success that he's having is absolutely remarkable and incredible. And if you were to listen to the people in the preseason or prior to the draft talking about he's an H-back, he's a gadget guy, where you gotta try to get creative with him to make him work in the NFL. They are being a little bit creative with him, but he is dominating in traditional roles. He is able to block, and that was one of the biggest things is people said he wasn't big enough, strong enough to block in the line. He is doing it all. And then Ladd McConkey, too small, too slow, can't catch, blah, 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 all this other bull crap. He is dominant, and everybody knows you're going to him because the guy that they spent all the money on, the big ticket item is help me out, Harrison, the guy from TCU, the wide receiver for
Quentin Johnson.
Quentin Johnson. Not even a fraction of what Ladd McConkey is, but yet he had all the measurables, all the hype. I think he was a top 10 pick, if I'm not mistaken, Harrison, and you can correct me on that. But, I think it just goes to show you how Georgia doesn't just hone in on one guy and just really focus on one guy offensively. We're using a lot of different people because you have 2,000-yard guys in the same season. And if they're doing this at the highest level, the NFL level, they were more than capable of putting up those exact same numbers at Georgia. But we just didn't use them that way because we were not focused on one area, right? I'm not saying that as a slap at University of Georgia. I'm saying that more as a compliment to the University of Georgia, where they use all of their weapons instead of just relying on one guy. And I think it's a great compliment to the University of Georgia what both of these gentlemen are able to do at the next level. And I think every single Georgia fan, except for that one part of our fan base who's never happy about anything, I think we're all extremely happy for both of those guys. And I think we felt like this was coming, maybe not to the level that it was able to come, because they are, I think it's fair to say they are exceeding all of our expectations, but I'm extremely happy for both of them. And I hope I did your segment justice, Harrison.
I thought it was, we had to bring it up, and Dan had actually, we had a Dan rant planned. I was like, "Ooh, we get a second mini rant from Dan on Brock Bowers and Lad McConkey?" Because I thought we'd be remiss if we didn't have something mention those two guys. And it's funny when you go back and you look at some of the talk. I know Todd Hartley retweeted something he put out last week or last year in April when talking about Brock in the draft. You know, he was like, "Hey, don't overthink it, guys. Like, this is one of the best players in the draft, and you should take him." And now he's playing like probably the best rookie in the draft class. Then you go back a few years before that in 2022, right before Georgia took on Tennessee at home in 2022, Kobe, there was that quote from a mysterious, what was it? College football coach, fellow coach, SEC coach. I don't know what it was, who it was from. I don't remember off the top of my head, talking about, hey, Lad's not good enough.
An anonymous SEC coach, and a lot of people think that, you know, it came from some Tennessee insider.
Yeah, just talking about, hey, Lad's not good enough to be at the top level of college football. Now he's at the top level of the NFL right now, playing out of his mind.
Well, what's funny about that quote too, if I remember it right, is that they were like, "Oh, they're getting more production out of lesser players than it makes sense." They're like, "I don't understand how they get such good production out of McConkey with him being slow, with him being small, with him being all these things." And it's like, you know, maybe if you look past the fact that he's a little undersized, I mean, he's really, really fast. He's really quick. He runs very efficient routes. He has really sure hands. I mean, I think right now, seeing what you're seeing with them being a pair of 1,000-yard receivers in the NFL, you understand why maybe our offensive game plan against Alabama last year was, even with these guys at 65%, they're still better than what we have anywhere else on the field right now. And I think that was something I didn't even understand, because I was the same thing. Like, Lad is actively limping as he's running routes. You know, Brock does not look normal out there. Why are we trying to get them the ball? And it's because them with the ball in the hands is better than almost anything else we had to throw out there last year. You know, I think it's unbelievable they're having such good years. Obviously, NFL careers get remembered not for what you do one year, but what you do over the collection of years. You know, I'll be very interested to see. I think we all think that the Raiders are going to be all in on a quarterback this draft. I'll be interested to see who that will be for Brock for the next 4 to 5 years, hopefully longer. As far as Lad goes, I think he's in a great spot. You know, he's got a coach that prioritized the offensive line in the first round. They have a great quarterback. They play good defense. They run the ball. And with that, they're going to have a lot of opportunities for big plays and play action pass. And that's really where Lad has thrived here. And it's where he's thrived there too. You know, good on them. They have the big body in Quentin Johnson. They really have just given Lad the opportunity to be the guy that if you need short yardage or if you need a big play deep down the field, he's kind of their go-to right this second. So great year for both of them. And both of them have one more game to kind of see where they'll end up. I think if I remember right, I was looking, Puka has the all-time yards record for a rookie. I think at like 1,400. If I'm
correct. He just set that last year, and that's another thing I wanted to point out real quick. You go back to the recent Senior Bowl right before, Jim Nagy came out with the tweet. You can go find it, talking about, you know, this is the next Puka when talking about Lad. have a great rookie season type receiver. This is that guy. And look at the season he's done. I mean, it just great stuff from both those guys. Tremendous selling point for Georgia on the recruiting trail when it comes to recruiting more receivers and tight ends. They have two guys in the NFL that are balling out, kind of like, what people were saying when Pickens came out of Georgia and started playing really well in NFL. That's another recruiting data point for that coaching staff. Gentlemen, let's change gears. Let's get into, we still have, Dan, you're muted.
Damn it. Can I throw out one thing?
Damn it, boy. Yeah.
Everybody says you can't compare him to Wes Welker or any of those. Like, nobody, my Steve Largent take is gotten no grip. Like, he's freaking Steve Largent. That's who he is. Okay, they're separated by 1 inch and 3 pounds. How in the hell is nobody else catching on to this? But anyway, Steve Largent is who I think he reminds me of in Hall of Fame wide receiver. Probably one of the greatest wide receivers of all time, and nobody will bite. Nobody will even consider it. Drives me crazy. Sorry.
I don't know about you, Kobe, but I wasn't around when Steve Largent was playing, so I can't attest to that.
I couldn't pick Steve Largent out of a lineup if you line 5 people up in front of me and you're like, which one of these people are Steve Largent? I'd be like, good question. Let me look him up right here. I'll rebuttal my own fact. I will be able to pick out Steve Largent lineup in 2 seconds.
Yeah, that's a you problem.
Yeah, it is a us problem. I will have to go look up Steve Largent here in a little bit. But we'll get to it after we get through this. I think it's going to be a great show. Gentlemen, let's talk Georgia Notre Dame. Dan, me and you were on the same page today. You sent me something on Instagram, and it was a soundbite of somebody talking this game. And it was, I'd say, one of the more outlandish takes on this game, although
I sent it to Kobe too.
You did? Okay. I think it's going to get I think we have one other outlandish take that I put here on the show notes. We're going to call this segment, What Are They Saying? And specifically, it is, what are they saying about Georgia Notre Dame? And the ominous they being some of the experts here in the industry, Kobe and Dan, because we are going to get into our predictions for the show later here on the show. We're going to preview the Georgia Notre Dame matchup, give you our picks for it, along with the other second round quarterfinal games of the college football playoff. But let's get a temperature check on what the experts are saying. Starting first with Joel Klatt, obviously of Fox Sports. This was via the Ryan Russillo show. He went on it this past week, talked about the matchup between Georgia and Notre Dame, and said this, and I quote, "This Georgia team struggles against mobile quarterbacks. We saw that with Haynes King. We saw that with Jalen Milroe," Klatt said. "This matchup to me very much favors Notre Dame. If Beck was playing, I would have been picking Notre Dame. And now that Stockton's playing, I'm definitely picking Notre Dame." Gentlemen, initial thoughts and reactions to Joel Klatt's take on it.
Known Georgia hater.
I think that it's one of those things with Joel Klatt. For whatever reason, the game against Indiana has made Notre Dame the new darling of the playoffs. People are like, Notre Dame, Ohio State for the Natty. Like that after the first round, that's all I've heard. Yeah, Ohio State's going to beat the shit out of Oregon. Georgia doesn't stand a chance against Notre Dame. And it's like he said right there. Even with Carson Beck, he's picking them. It's like, I think the only reason I would even have a question in this game would be on quarterback play alone. But, I mean, I still just think that if you think that Riley Leonard is the same level of mobile quarterback as Jalen Milroe, I just think you're not watching a lot of football.
And I think you're right. I think that's what it comes down to. I don't think he watches a lot of football. I think he watches a lot of highlights. I think he watches a lot of ESPN and, the packages they put together. And I don't know if you know this, but Kobe, you can make I knew it was going to fucking happen at some point. Anybody can look good in the highlight package. I can make my son look like the next coming of Joe Montana in a highlight package if I want to. But that's not the truth of the matter. So I get extremely frustrated with these takes. I get extremely frustrated with these personalities. And I think part of it is everybody was so wrong on Indiana that they're overreacting to make themselves look right. They're like, oh no, I wasn't wrong that Indiana was not a good football team. I was just wrong that Notre Dame was not the most greatest thing on earth. That's what happened. That's why Indiana looks so bad. It's because Notre Dame is so dominant. But you know what? This is common. This is something that we've dealt with our entire lives with Notre Dame. Whenever they get a little bit going in one direction, everybody jumps on. So, I am not here to crap on Notre Dame. Love Notre Dame, have a lot of respect for Notre Dame. But if you're watching them in this, so they're like, I don't know how Georgia's going to handle Notre Dame. It's like, guys, I don't know if you know this, but Georgia has played 8 games this year where the team that they played against was as good, if not better, than what Notre Dame is. They've played Notre Dame 8 times this year. Okay? Notre Dame has not played Georgia 1 time this year. They have not played anybody approaching the level of talent that Georgia has. Not 1 time. Now, I did see a Notre Dame fan say, we may not be battle tested, but we just have to be battle ready 1 time. That is 100% true. I will allow that conversation. I will allow that take because that is true. And I wish I could remember who said it. It was just a random somebody. It wasn't like a personality. But they said, we don't have to be battle tested. We just have to be battle ready 1 time. And that's 100% true.
My favorite one I've seen lately has been the domino effect, right? Notre Dame beat Navy. Navy beat Oklahoma. Oklahoma beat Alabama. Alabama beat Georgia. Therefore, Notre Dame will beat Georgia. Love those takes. They get
there's
hilarious.
A better one.
I haven't heard a better one than that one.
Georgia barely beat Georgia Tech, and Notre Dame beat Georgia Tech 31-13. So there you go.
Next one.
By proxy, they're going to kill us.
Yeah, transitive property. The most sure way of picking college football game. Transitive property there, folks. The next one comes from another Big Ten coach. Actually, a Big Ten coach, not a Big Ten player. This wasn't intentional. These were the 2 I found, and they're both kind of contrasting each other. So I picked Urban Meyer. Urban Meyer said via his Triple Option podcast, which he does with Mark Ingram, and I forget the third option on that show. I apologize. I believe he's more of the host type, the third option there. He said, and I quote, I stare at these point spreads, and I think they're right on. However, with Notre Dame, how are the players going to respond when they see a high draft pick across from them? Because they haven't seen that. I think the point spread is right. I'm going to go with Georgia to cover. So we have Joel Klatt taking the Bulldogs, and we have Joel Klatt taking Notre Dame. Definitely, he said. Definitely. Keyword, definitely. Urban has Georgia covering, which doesn't sound as confident as Klatt saying definitely Notre Dame. Is it safe to say Klatt has Georgia winning or has Notre Dame winning by more than a touchdown? Definitely just comes across to me as, yeah, this is going to be a pretty decisive result from Notre Dame.
Yeah, I'd like to start off by saying I hate Urban Meyer. So that now that's out of the way. I definitely think that Joe Klatt is saying that it's not a close game or overly competitive game. I think that he's thinking that the Dogs are going to be handled by Notre Dame. I would just say that at this time, I don't expect any of the 4 semifinal, or I guess they're not semifinal, quarterfinal games to be just a one-sided affair. I think the one that could be the closest to being that is, Penn State, Boise State. I don't know, maybe Texas if Arizona State can't score against that defense. But I'm expecting these games to be, 10 points or less, all 4 of them. So I don't see us being handled. I'd have to look back at before the Ole Miss game this year, how many times I think we've ever really been handled on a football field ever. Now, we may have lost a game here or there, but physically just dominated, I can't think of many.
The last time that I can remember Georgia not being competitive was when we played LSU in the SEC championship game, and that Joe Burrow team. But in fairness, nobody was good in that game. So, sorry, guys.
I got refreshments.
I'm getting refreshed. I'm getting snacked up right here. So
flip the blizzard.
No, it's melting. Yeah, but honest to goodness, the only time I can remember in the last couple of years where Georgia was non-competitive was the LSU game. I guess you could say the Alabama game this year, first half, non-competitive. But yeah, I just keep coming back to, like, first of all, if you're going to take an opinion, okay, and I'm not saying you have to believe any of them, but if you're going to take an opinion, and one of them is Joel Klatt, and one of them is, most people would make an argument, the second best coach of this generation, Urban Meyer. I'm not saying I would make that argument because I think Kirby has passed him by. But like, aside from Kirby, I mean, dude, Urban won everywhere he went. So I mean, it'd be hard to argue. But anyway, you're taking Urban's opinion, a guy who has won in a lot of different places, or Joel Klatt, who ain't done shit. I don't know. I'm going to probably go there. I was about to give you a heart attack with the Urban Meyer take.
No. He was talking about Urban Meyer himself.
Yeah.
Gentlemen, from what are they saying to what are we saying? Let's preview this matchup. Georgia's a 1.5-point favorite. Dan, first taste. How's that blizzard? 1 out of 10. One bite only.
Oh, it's a 10. It's a 10 every time. I mean, Dairy Queen doesn't get the blizzard. Oh, Butterfinger blizzard.
Okay.
See,
is that acceptable?
I might just be basic, but I'm an Oreo blizzard guy, and that's just might just be as basic as you get.
It's my wife.
I like if I have to go with like the plain one, I'd say like a Reese's Blizzard. But I like they do the Choco Brownie Extreme, which has the little chocolate chunks in it too.
Ooh,
that's Keenan's go-to.
Sorry, I know we got off topic there. That's what we do here on the Top podcast, gentlemen. Right back into our lead here over for the Georgia Notre Dame game. Georgia's a 1.5-point favorite. They are 3-0 all time versus Notre Dame. Obviously, the last time these two teams matched up in this building, Georgia pulled out the 17-10 win. Sugar was indeed falling from the sky as Herschel Walker jumped over the goal line to get Georgia that win. What was it? Separated shoulder? I believe it was, as he jumped over that goal line to give Georgia the win. And you look at the history here. I'm just going to read out the last two results following that one touchdown win for Georgia. These have been close games. 20-19 win for Georgia in 2017. 23-17 win for Georgia in 2019. Our guy, Kobe Pierce, was there in the 2019 game. Might have been there, I believe, in the 2017 game. I don't mean to date you too far. Dan was there in attendance. Wild fun fact on that one. These have always been one-score games. But I don't know, coming into this matchup, maybe dating back to 2019, that we've had a Georgia-Notre Dame matchup that is essentially a pick'em game, which is really crazy considering the run Georgia's been on over the last 3 years, because Georgia's won, 2 back-to-back national titles? And what has Notre Dame done? Maybe outside of a couple 10-win seasons? Not much.
I just think it all really comes down to what a good job they're doing with their program on, ground and pound, run the ball, be physical up front. They've always had really good offensive linemen. I think back to the 2017 game, I'm pretty sure that was Mike McGlinchey was one of their tackles that year. I'm pretty sure if you look back, they had a good guard the year we played them again in 19.
He plays for the Cowboys.
Yeah. I can't remember his name, though. It's not Zach Martin, is it?
Yeah.
Was it? I don't think so.
Martin was the same draft class as Johnny Manziel.
Yeah, that was way back. But like you're saying, they've always had some really good. Cole Kmet was on that 2019 team that tight end. He gave us fits that night too in Athens. But they always have guys that to me are a little under the radar coming out of high school. They get them into that program, have them in the weight room doing things the right way, and then they pride themselves in doing some things. So. I think they're going to come out and they're going to try to be physical and attack the edge and run the ball. It's what they did against Indiana. It's what they have done all year when they've had some success. I don't think this is the kind of game for us or for them where if you see your quarterback attempting 30-plus passes, I think you're playing from behind in a big deficit. I think that, you're going to be trying to run the ball as much as you can, trying to control the clock. I think the new clock rule is going to be interesting here of like if you're up by 10, if you're up by 2 scores 14, how often are you just trying to run the ball? I don't know if y'all watched any of the ball games this weekend, but Army had a 21 play, 14.5-minute drive that resulted in a touchdown. That would be an ideal way to play a couple of these games.
Kobe, that's the interesting part about this game for me in terms of you talk about both teams up front and being able to run the football. Georgia historically, obviously, when you think of Georgia, I think most people think about the running backs. You think about Herschel Walker, you think about Todd Gurley, you think about Nick Chubb, Sony Michel, all those guys. Well, Georgia ranks 98th nationally in rushing yards per game. Notre Dame's 10th nationally. Where it gets even more interesting, it's kind of it's really interesting. So Notre Dame ranks top 10 in rushing. They rank 101st in passing yards per game. Georgia ranks 12th. Granted, the big elephant in the room, Carson Beck will not be the quarterback for this game. I'm really curious to see what does Georgia need to do to win this game? Because you have a first career starting quarterback back there. You'd assume they aren't going to come out here and throw it 40 times in this game. You'd assume not. Maybe if circumstances change and you got to come back to win, that could happen. But we know, I think we have a good idea of what Notre Dame's going to do, and you can't fault them. Georgia's biggest, kryptonite this year, what's given them trouble, have been mobile quarterbacks. And this guy may not be, Riley Leonard may not be the athlete Jalen Milroe is, maybe not even the athlete Jackson Dart or Haynes King is, but when you look at what those three guys did against Georgia's defense, I have the stat for Jackson Dart. He didn't really run against Georgia that much that game. He picked up just 50 yards. It was really more so what they did through the air that hurt Georgia. I mean, yeah, it's good, but when you compare it to the other two, it's kind of a blip on the radar. Jalen Milroe rushed for 117 yards and 2 touchdowns versus Georgia, and then Haynes King went full Superman, 110 yards and 3 rushing touchdowns against the Georgia defense. I don't know if Leonard will put up those numbers, but I'd argue you probably don't need to win this game. You just need him to, it's cliche, but if he just picks up a couple third downs or first downs with his legs and extends drives, that's what gives Georgia trouble. Kobe, I'm going to ask you this because and Dana, you can pitch in here too. When I watched Notre Dame against Indiana, outside of Faison, I don't know if there is a receiver that scares Georgia explosively. I think their most explosive player, and the one that Georgia will no doubt be paying attention to, is Jeremiah Love. But as Dan so eloquently put it last week, Georgia has done really well versus these traditional run teams. It has been these quarterback run teams that have given them trouble. What is your read when you look at Notre Dame's offense?
Yeah, I think, like you're saying, a mobile quarterback just makes you account for one more player. And when you're playing against top tier, receivers, running backs, tight ends, having the quarterback being a threat just kind of limits the coverages and the packages you can run out there in order to cover him. I think that's what makes Jalen Walker, somebody that deserved to win the award he won in the Butkus, is because, yes, he's not your traditional middle linebacker in the sense of he's in there making a tackle every play, has 100 tackles on the season. But the fact that he can play the outside, play the inside, play the quarterback spy, and has the speed to keep up with a variety of quarterbacks and ability to diagnose plays and make spill plays to where his help is, just makes him very valuable in a game like this, because I don't think, unlike the Alabama game where Milroe is probably a little bit faster than Walker, I don't think one-on-one in space Leonard's going to be a lot faster. He may be a little bigger, but honestly, help's coming. All you really have to do is slow him down, even trip him up and kind of get some help there. I was just looking back at talking about just some statistics from that 2017 game, just thinking about not wanting to throw the ball a lot. In that game, you had Fromm attempted 29 passes. He only completed 16 of them for an average of 4.9 yards per reception. He had 1 touchdown, 1 interception. Ran the ball for 185 on the ground that game. But I don't think that's the kind of game we're going to have. I think odds are Gunner's going to have a little bit better statistics than that. But like you're saying, you're definitely going to lean on a run game. And, Kirby, their MO has been limit the run of another team and then make them beat you throwing the ball. And I just don't know if we limit the run like we did against Texas to less than 2 yards per carry by running backs. I'm just not sure that there's a lot of teams that can throw the ball over our heads consistently. Not on our side of the bracket anyways. How about that?
Well, I think the one thing that Georgia does extremely well is stop the run. They've always been able to do that under Kirby. We may not have the exact same personnel, but this game reminds me so much of the game against Michigan, where Michigan had this just otherworldly rushing attack and that they were going to run it all over us, and there was no chance that Georgia could stop them. And, oh, my gosh, Michigan is just going to run it down your throat, blah, 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 blah. Okay, well, first of all, this Notre Dame team is not even as good as that Michigan team was. Now, at the same time, this Georgia defense is not as good as it was that same year as well. And, I've had I had a conversation with one of my good friends the other day, and, I'll admit that this is probably one of the worst Georgia teams we've had in the last 4 or 5 years. It's not as good as the other ones. But the one thing this Georgia team can do is stop the run, especially if you're a traditional run. And if you watch Notre Dame a lot, they really don't feature their quarterback as a running quarterback the same way that Georgia Tech did. They're not like an option-based team where their quarterback is running it every third or fourth attempt. So they want to run the ball traditionally. But Georgia has the ability to stop the run. And like you said, being able to stop Texas running the football, I think, is harder to do than stopping Notre Dame running the football. And if you want to tell me that Notre Dame is better than Texas, I don't really want to hear that argument. I don't believe that for a second. Could Georgia lose this game? Absolutely, Georgia could lose this game. Sure. There's 2 football teams that are going to show up and they're going to play football. The ball is not round. It bounces different ways. Things can happen. But I want to go all the way back to a long time ago when Harrison said that, Georgia can't throw the ball or may not want to throw the ball because they have Gunner Stockton and he's a new quarterback. Gunner Stockton's been in the program for quite a while. Gunner Stockton is an established quarterback, and he's not just some guy. He's not a walk-on or a guy who just gets added to a roster. He's a 5-star quarterback. He's been in the program for, if I believe this is his 3rd year in the program. He's been the scout team quarterback. He's thrown. He's done all these different things. I don't think there's going to be any hesitation. And if you need any proof to that, go see what Nick Saban said this week. Nick Saban was on Pat McAfee's show, and they were talking about the transition. And he said, go look at the first drive when Gunner Stockton came in. And Nick Saban, verbatim, they didn't change a damn thing. That's exactly what Nick Saban said. They didn't change a damn thing. There was zero hesitation to let this kid run their offense, and they did it with success. So for all of those people who are wanting to say that Georgia can't be the same team with Gunner Stockton, I will take you straight to Nick Saban's mouth. They didn't change a damn thing. So if you're expecting to see something dramatically different, I think you're wrong. I think Bobo has a lot of faith in Gunner Stockton, and that was the point that I wanted to make earlier before we moved on to the run defense. But I think Gunner Stockton is going to have all the faith in the world of this offensive staff to let him run our offense.
I think the point that is worth making, and not that y'all don't remember this, but there might be others. Mike Bobo was the coordinator at South Carolina when Stockton committed to South Carolina. Like Stockton came over to Georgia after Bobo was hired at Georgia. That was a big part of his recruitment, a big part of why he committed to Georgia. So this is a Bobo guy. Like this is as close as you'll get to like a hand-picked quarterback over there from Mike Bobo as Dan chows down over there on his blizzard.
It's gone.
Kobe, you made this point. Talk to me about it because I'm dying to see some quarterback counter back in this offense.
Yeah, that's exactly what I think it's going to be. I think it's going to be like any young quarterback. Dan will tell you, what do you do to make life easier? What do you do if you're an Ohio State, offense that has a mobile quarterback? You roll him out of the pocket, you reset the pocket somewhere else, and you make him read half the field. It's the oldest trick in the book, right? You don't sit there in the middle of the field and make him read from right to left and read a wide field with a bunch of DBs watching his eyes. You let him roll out and you throw it. He's got, a lot of levels. He's got one guy coming kind of close to the line of scrimmage on like a close level, and he's got one guy breaking deep. That's it. And if neither of them are there, you just run and you go get your 4 yards and you come back and you do it again. I think that's going to be something you're going to see a lot. You're going to see him outside of the pocket with Oscar Delp or, Jurasic, running in front of his eyes. And then you're going to see an Arian Smith or a Dom Lovett running at like the 15 to 20 yard mark. And at that point, he's going to have 2 options, and the third option is going to be for him to keep it. And then, of course, obviously, we're going to see him drop back in the pocket. You're going to have to. And then you're going to try to start the run. You're going to see true quarterback read. You saw that in the SEC championship game where he actually has a chance to keep the read. He actually is reading the defensive end. I think that's going to help a lot in your run game. I think that's always been such a peculiar call for me when you have a non-mobile quarterback, that you run the shotgun, running back right beside you, true, stick it in their gut read play when, 9 times out of 10, it's always a give, because if you let the quarterback keep it, he just isn't going to have the ability to make the same plays.
And, that's one of the things that you talk about. You said with a young quarterback, a lot of times it's a one-read system, right? So, first of all, it's half the field and it's one read. You have this safety right here. If he comes down, we're going over the top. If he stays back, we're going to go underneath. And that's what they did with Justin Fields at Ohio State. That's why a lot of people didn't think that Ohio State quarterbacks could have success in the NFL, is because Ohio State's a one-read system where you're reading one particular guy. You'll have multiple routes into one zone, and you're reading one guy. If you take this away, we're going to go here. If you're going to take that away, we're going to go here. I don't expect to see that with Gunner. I honestly don't. I think he is a processor. I think he's able to make decisions. One of my biggest critiques out of him coming out of high school was that whenever the talent was equal or greater than, he didn't have a lot of success. But part of that reason, and if I go back and I'm objective about it, is he was trying to do too much on his own. I think in this Georgia system with all the talent around him, and I think that this is one of those lessons that you learn by taking mental reps, is that Carson Beck has already tried to do that this year. I think that visual was there for everyone to see, that with this Georgia football team, you can be ultra successful just doing what they ask you to do. Nothing more, nothing less. Just execute. And I think Gunner is more than capable. And I know it's a nasty term in quarterback play as a game manager, right? But there is a lot of benefit to being a game manager. Just do what we're asking you to do. Make these simple reads. Make these simple decisions. Like you put in there, Harrison, you never go broke taking a profit, right? Well, I think that was one of the biggest mistakes that we saw earlier in the season, was that Carson was trying to do too much. I think the success that we saw Carson have later in the year was him just doing what he was supposed to do, right? Not forcing it.
Yeah, I mean, they talk about, when you see people talk about the Georgia Tech game and kind of Georgia's resurgence the second half, there's 4 throws that I saw. They were all checkdowns. And they're like, man, Carson hit these checkdowns, and no, they didn't go for 50, 20, 60 yards. They went for, maybe 7 to 10 yards. They got a first down, kept a drive alive. And those were what analysts were saying. Hey, these are some of the most impactful plays that he maybe overlooked when he tried to go for that circus throw that he tried to force it in, at Florida to London Humphreys and gets picked off. That was something maybe he overlooked in the past. Exceptional point there. Kobe, you had a point you wanted to add in right there.
Yeah, just the fact that I hate that the term game manager has become a negative term. It was such a positive term for a quarterback for so long. Like, why would you not want to have someone who manages the game, the pace of your offense well? And now it's just become such a this negative, your quarterback's unathletic. All he can do is throw the ball, and just not my favorite new term with a twist, I guess.
And we agree on that.
Yeah. It's funny because you look at, so obviously I think Jake Fromm was the quarterback that was synonymous with the term, the negativity of that term. Then you go to Stetson Bennett, and Stetson Bennett's at Georgia. Everyone's trying to take away from Stetson Bennett. Oh, it's the defense. He's just a game manager. He's just keeping the wheels on the road. Now Stetson's gone, and everyone's saying, oh, y'all don't have Stetson Bennett anymore. I'm like, can we make up our mind around here?
If you ever watched Stetson play one freaking down of football and you thought he was a game manager, you're out of your damn mind. That kid thought he was Brett Favre. I mean, he could run the ball like Steve Young, but he thought he was Brett Favre. There was nothing game manager about Stetson Bennett. So whatever on that.
Sometime they had to rein Stetson in a little bit.
Correct. There's nothing manager about that kid.
Sometimes you had to rein Stetson in a little bit. And I think they finally got Beck to start doing the same. Hey, don't try to be Superman. We just need you to play within the offense. And that was the term I think we talked about ad nominem, over and over again. Play within the offense. They have the playmakers. Just get them the ball. Gentlemen, I have some stats here. I did a statistical rundown because I think it's interesting. We've done this before, and we came to the same conclusion. I think Tennessee was the last time when we looked at the stat sheet and we said, man, everything leans Tennessee for the most part. And it's kind of here similarly. Third down. Third down, Georgia's better than Notre Dame. Georgia's converting at a 40.9% clip on third down. Notre Dame's 38.3%. They rank 87th. Points per game, Notre Dame, or points per game allowed, Notre Dame's third in the country. Georgia's at 23rd. Rushing yards allowed, Notre Dame ranks 51st. Georgia ranks 36th. Passing yards allowed, Georgia ranks 50th. Notre Dame ranks 3rd. Dan, here's one that I threw in here because this always brings, I think, we have this conversation a lot privately in terms of like where are the takeaways for Georgia. Georgia has just 8 takeaway interceptions this year, 92nd in the country in interceptions. Notre Dame has 17, which ranks number 4. For the most part, it looks, hey, on paper, Notre Dame's the better team. But our sport's not played on paper, which is why I'm going to weave this in here. You have to take the schedule into consideration because there is 100%. Indiana. And you go look at, I can send y'all the link for that. If you go look at the spreadsheet of when they were comparing Georgia to a hypothetical matchup versus Indiana, Indiana was ranked higher than Georgia in most of those categories. But look what happened to them when they got into the playoffs and played a team with a pulse. Dan, you sent this to Kobe and I wanted to give this to you. And I should have done it in the what they are saying about segment. That guy you sent me, and I will go find it and give him credit for what he said. Dan, he said his take was that there was no what was it? There is no advantageous matchup for Georgia, outright advantage that Georgia has versus Notre Dame.
Except for coaching.
What do you say to that? Except for coaching. What do you say to that?
The guy does not know ball. He is a gambler who sits behind a computer and looks at numbers and looks at statistics. He doesn't take anything into account. I would love to bet that man straight up. I wish he would. I would bet whatever he wanted to bet. His take was so asinine, it was laughable. And you know what? Sometimes that is like sometimes people say stuff like that to get traction. I get it, but he said that there's no. He said go back to what. He said his name and I can't think. The Greek Jimmy the Greek used to do, and he would do. And you've seen this a million different times. Maybe you didn't know it was Jimmy the Greek, but it was, he would go quarterback. Who gets, but that doesn't make any sense because the running backs don't play each other. The quarterbacks don't play each other. The wide receivers don't play each other. Like it's, so I always thought that was a dumb exercise. It's my quarterback versus your defense and your quarterback versus my defense. And Georgia has a line, here's the one thing that you're not taking into consideration when you do stupid shit like that. And when you say reckless things like he came out of his mouth, what defensive line has that offensive line played at any point during the season that resembles anything that Georgia's played? What offensive line resembles anything that defensive line for Notre Dame has played against that looks like Georgia's offensive line? Georgia's offensive line is one of the best offensive lines in the country. They have not played anybody to that level. Notre Dame has not lined up against a team at any point this season that has 10 NFL players on the other side or 11 NFL players on the other side. They haven't lined up against an offense that has, 4 guys in the offensive line that are probably going to play in the NFL. So I am out on this mixed matching of Georgia doesn't have an advantage. Notre Dame has not played anybody as good as Georgia. Does that mean that Georgia couldn't lose the game? No. I mean, it's a football game. Shit happens that's crazy all the time. But this all these reckless takes that Georgia has no business being on the field with Notre Dame are just asinine, and they raise my blood pressure to unhealthy levels. I am willing to have real debates with real people, but like when you just come out and say reckless shit like that, you make me want to just go off the deep end, Kobe. I mean, I just get so frustrated. I just want to yell.
And see, I agree with that, but I also love hearing statistics like Harrison just showed us, right? And the one that stuck out to me, like any time, right? Passing yards allowed per game for the defense for Notre Dame, 157.9. It ranks third in the NCAA. Anytime somebody's in the top 10 in a category, I always think, wow, how crazy is this team? But then, for whatever reason, as one does, I start thinking to myself, well, I wonder what kind of big games in today's football have they played against teams where they have just been shut down in DB. They hadn't allowed any passing yards. I'll give you a couple of examples here. You tell me what you think if these numbers may be skewed a little bit. We're going to start off. They played Navy, right? Navy attempted 13 passes, only completed 7 of them for 88 yards. Okay.
Yeah.
Next, they played the Great and Mighty Army. Army attempted 8 passes, completed 4 of them for 26 yards. And then they played Florida State, one of the worst teams in all of football, with their backup or maybe even third string quarterback in. He completed 5 passes on the day for 51 yards. Now let's take a glance at maybe a competent team that they played. The great 6-6 USC Trojans. Oh, look at that. Completed 29 passes for 360 yards and 3 touchdowns. Now, out of the 4 of those teams, who do you think is going to play the most like a playoff caliber team? No offense to our wonderful boys in blue. I just don't think any of you are known for being the pass attack. You've always been known for the triple option. Florida State, the dumpster fire they are with a backup or third string quarterback. Don't see them having a big day. USC, their ability to score, I think that's going to be a lot more what we're going to look like being able to throw the ball. Not saying Notre Dame is not a good defense, not saying they're not a good passing defense, but anytime you look at they're giving up less than 200 yards per game, only like 150 yards per game. Third, it is what it is. Sorry, Robert. Known troop hater.
Known troop hater. Yeah, you're 100% right, and that is a great way to illustrate it. Is that there are games that can absolutely skew the numbers, right? And like one of my favorite lines, "Forever and ever, amen," will always be, "You can make numbers dance," right? You can. Business people do it all the time. Accountants do it all the time. Bank people, and you can make one of the richest people in the world look poor if you do the numbers the right way. And that's what these numbers do. I am not a stats guy. I am not an analytics guy. Harrison will tell you in our conversations, when he gets numbers heavy, I check out, and he'll have to just be like, hey, come back. I'm telling you numbers. I guess I'm not smart enough to deal with it. I mean, maybe that's just a Dan problem. But I can watch tape, and I can watch 2 teams play, and I can tell you one thing is not like the other. And I can tell you, and again, I am not here to crap on Notre Dame. I love Notre Dame. But if you think it's a level playing field up to this point of the season, it's just not. I get frustrated, and I think that's the biggest takeaway with this whole lead up to this is I just get overly frustrated when people go to extremes. Like there's no reason for that, and it's just what are we doing? I don't know. All right.
Sorry. I didn't want to make this note. Dan is.
I was trying to get shit out of my mind, and I got stuff flashing all over the screen.
The Dawg Talk experience is one of great fun. Dan, Kobe, we have update. We love you, Dan. We do. Even he is our favorite punter on the show of all time. Even Brett Thorson. Sorry, Brett. Don't mean to break your heart there.
Dude,
Gentlemen, I guess
better
just
than me.
Brett's amazing.
He's so much better than I ever was.
I'm sad we don't get to see Brett Thorson one more time. At least one more time. I hate the way he went out. Not what he deserves on how he went out and got injured. Really hate that for him. Hopefully he enjoys rooting on his team and goes on to have a great NFL career. Gentlemen, I guess just one last point. I put this on Twitter just because it was interesting. I guess since we're in the numbers season of sorts, kind of like Kobe said, and heck, maybe this inspires Kobe to go do another numbers deep dive. I was looking at kind of the points per quarter spread for each team, and I thought it was interesting. And Notre Dame has outscored their opponents this regular season 101-37 in the first quarter. Georgia was outscored 63-55 in the first quarter. But then you go a little bit deeper, and we talk about the slow starts. And my God, this was when me and Dan came to the realization, hey, it's getting repetitive to talk what if Georgia, hits that third gear, and just said, hey, they are what they are. They are what the show us they are. We talked about slow starts over and over and over again. And then let's dive a little bit deeper here. And this is what we come to realize. And I think a lot of people need to realize. Newsflash, football is a 4-quarter game. So Georgia's has not scored in the first quarter 6 times this season and managed to go 5-1 in those games. They trailed at halftime in 6 games this season and went 4-2 in those games. The only losses at when they were trailing at halftime was Alabama and Ole Miss. Gentlemen, I guess just to tie this thing up on Dan, real quick, I'm gonna throw it to you. The point I guess I'm trying to make here, I'm really curious to see if Georgia gets off to a fast start against Notre Dame. Newsflash. But I guess for me, I'm more curious about, hey, does having Gunner and what Gunner does well translate into Georgia starting faster? Dan, take it away.
I didn't have a massive talking point. I just wanted to say one of the reasons that Georgia is a 4-quarter team and has those comebacks when they fall behind is they have more depth than all these other teams. And, Kirby talked about at the beginning of the season, he didn't have the depth that he wanted, okay? But if you look at the way he's recruited, he has more depth than everybody else. So, towards the end of the game, Georgia's able to put guys in there that are pretty fresh compared to the other guys are kind of running on fumes, which allows them to come back. So I think no lead is safe against this Georgia team because they have the depth to keep fighting all 4 quarters.
And I'm going to double dip off of both what Harrison and Dan just said. Start with Harrison. I will be curious. One of the biggest pros while he was here and things that he was most infamous for when we've played against him, whether it be at South Carolina or at Auburn, has been how elite Mike Bobo's research into other teams and their tendencies on defense, and how the scripted parts of the first quarter drives have always been so difficult to defend against him. I think when he was at South Carolina, I think when he was at Auburn. Auburn, I can remember we played them there. They got the ball first, went right down like 6 plays, scored touchdown. I think that was 2021 against that defense. And people were looking around going, holy cow. Auburn was not that good. They did not have near as good a talent as we did. And they marched the ball straight down the field, straight into the end zone, 7-0 Auburn. What happened is then you kind of survived that initial punch in the mouth. Things didn't go as good from there. I'll be very interested to see if we can't script up a really good play set for the first, 10, 12 plays against Notre Dame and maybe steal a free touchdown early, make this game a 7-0 in the Dogs' favor early, and kind of then fight your way back into continuing to build upon that lead. As far as Dan goes with depth, I think the biggest thing about the depth that amazes me right now is how few people we've had enter the portal at this point in the season. I feel like at a time where people are riddled with portals, Penn State lost their backup quarterback already, and they've already played a game. We're holding on to guys that really could have an impact somewhere else next year, but they're here with the team now, helping any way they can going forward for this run. And I think that just speaks to the love that the guys have for one another, how much belief they have in this team, and how far they can go. anybody that doesn't want to be here, it's because they personally don't want to be here, not they because they've asked to be, sent away.
Gentlemen, it's that time. We have the picks, predictions for today's show. Final show before the college football playoff kicks off here on Tuesday with Penn State and Boise State. Since that's the Tuesday game, we'll start there. Penn State, Boise State. Boise State is the 3 seed, but Penn State is a 11.5-point favorite. Kobe, I'm going to let you go first on this one. Then we'll go Dan, and then I guess I'll give my pick.
Yeah, I think that Penn State has shown me that they can play defense at a very high level, and they can stop the run when necessary. I think Boise State is going to have to run the ball to win this game, and they're going to have to run the ball at a high level and then throw the ball and play action efficiently. I think I think Penn State is going to be able to handle the run game. I think they win by probably 10-14.
Yeah, unfortunately for Boise State, who have been a fun story. Ashton Genty's been great, and I don't think anybody on the show has anything negative to say about Ashton Genty. But the problem is, they're just not a very good football team. They haven't played a tough. I see Penn State winning this game pretty easily. I would be absolutely shocked to see Boise win this football game. I wouldn't be upset. I'd just be a little bit shocked. But then again, James Franklin has let us all down before, so who knows?
I'm going to ride with Elder here. I got Penn State. I think the way Boise State wins this game is not with its ground game. They're going to have to spread them out through the air. That's going to be key because Penn State's going to be rallying guys all up in that box to try and stop that run game. You're going to have to beat them deep, and you're going to have to do it consistently to win this game for Boise State. But, hey, I don't have much belief they're going to be able to do that, so I'm taking Boise State – or Penn State, in this matchup. Next one, we will go to the Peach Bowl in Atlanta. I guess I'll kick this off. We'll have Dan go second, Kobe go last. The 1:00 game, Texas versus Arizona State. Texas is a 12.5-point favorite. Just a reminder, guys, this is why we don't have auto bids or auto seeding, because you have the 2 lower seeds teams playing the 2 least talented teams in this quarterfinal, all being double-digit favorites. We got to change that. Anyways, no shock here. I think this will probably be a clean sweep across the board unless I motivate Kobe to pick against Texas because I think I haven't figured it out. I'm taking Texas to win this game. I think they'll cover the spread, 12.5. I'd feel even more comfortable if it was a 10.5-point spread, but Vegas can't be too generous with that one.
I think Scatterbo is an absolutely great story, great running back, just like Ashton Genty. But the problem is that Texas is really good at stopping the run, and I just don't think that Arizona State has enough in the tank to beat Texas. I'm with you. I think this is a Texas win.
Make this plain and simple. I said it. The only reason I picked Clemson is because I thought they could do it. You have to be able to stop the run to beat Texas. I don't think there's any way that Arizona State for 4 quarters can line up and stop the run. And in that case, I'm taking Texas and taking them to roll because when things get tough in the second half, I think Texas is just going to pound the rock. And I just think that from what I've seen, there are very few teams in all of college football that can stop that for 4 quarters.
Gentlemen, this is the pick'em game. By all sense. Rose Bowl, 5:00 kick here on the East Coast. Oregon, number 1 Oregon faces number 8 Ohio State. This is a rematch of the regular season where Oregon won. Despite Oregon having the first win over Ohio State is a 2.5-point favorite. Dan, where do you sit at this game? On this game?
This is a tough one because I've been consistent all year. Ohio State's the most talented team in the country, but Oregon has been the best team all year long. It's tough to beat somebody twice. We've talked about that. That was our biggest fear going in the SEC championship game playing Texas. It's very difficult to beat a team twice because usually to beat them the first time, you have to pull out all the stops and you have to do the things. But Georgia was able to do it. I don't know. That's one of the things we love Dan Lanning on this channel. I think all 3 of us love Dan Lanning and we love what he's doing out there. But I want I want Oregon to win this football game. I don't know if they can. This one's tough, man. This is you're 100% right. This is a pick'em game. I want Oregon to win so bad, but I think Ohio State's going to win.
Ooh, Dan's going with the Buckeyes. Kobe wanted me to go next because I assume he's still over there trying to figure out who he's picking. I don't quite know, so we're making a game time decision on my end. I'm with Dan. I think I want Oregon to win because of Dan Lanning, but there was just something about Ohio State's performance at home versus Tennessee that was just not shocking, but just it grabbed me. It got my attention. Dan has been saying it since the offseason. They're the most talented team in college football. I don't think that's arguably. I think they are. And they just have to get over the hump and go win the national title for the first time since Urban Meyer's been there. With that being said, it's not often that you can beat a team twice, and we've already heard that ad nauseum this year. It's hard to beat a team twice. I just think in the Rose Bowl, with how they played last week and how pissed off they were, I'm going to ride with Dan on this one. I'm taking Ohio State to win the Rose Bowl and advance to the semifinal. And what would, by all means, mean, according to us, would be them facing Texas. Kobe, where do you stand?
Yeah, famously have heard if you're going to be wrong, you might as well be wrong very loudly. I was wrong very loudly last week with Clemson versus Texas. I said that, I thought Clemson was going to be able to stop the run the ball, play good defense, make it close, keep it close. Some things that did not happen in that game. I think I'm going to be against the grain again this week. I think Oregon is going to get it done against Ohio State. I think my thought process this week is what I watched with Ohio State playing against Tennessee was a near perfect offensive game plan and execution. Not just the game plan was great, but the execution was at an elite level as well. I just don't know if they can repeat that level of execution back-to-back weeks. I don't think that's something we've seen from them a lot this year. That consistently, they are number one roster probably. Ole Miss probably number two roster. But the consistency of having them play at that level week in and week out, I think what we've seen from both of them is really high highs. And then it seems like they kind of have this dip back to, this ground level with everybody else. I think Dan has these guys at Oregon playing kind of that same bend, don't break, from 20 to 20. If we give up plays, so be it. But when we get down inside the 20, we want to condense and make scoring on us very, very difficult. I think they're going to bring a lot of pass rush. They're going to make throwing the ball very difficult. They're going to try to make running the ball, keep it very limited. I think Oregon's going to win this game. I think it's a close one again, an instant classic in the Rose Bowl. It could be up there with the Georgia-Oklahoma, in my opinion.
Next, the final game of the night, Georgia versus Notre Dame, a rematch of the 1981 National Championship in the Sugar Bowl. Clayton McGee says Georgia is, and I quote, not man enough to beat Notre Dame. Notre Dame's going to line up and smash them, and they're going to play defense, and Georgia's not man enough to stop it. There's Clayton McGee's pick. I guess I'll go ahead and start this one off. Dan, you haven't been able to go last night, so we'll go ahead and build up the suspense in your pick, if there is any suspense in that one. I think Georgia wins this game, and I simply think it comes down to Kirby Smart's been there. Kirby Smart's done that. We've seen that with when Georgia's played Texas this year. Texas was the hot up-and-comer, top team in college football, according to many, and Georgia went in there and beat them. We talked a lot on the show is Georgia's ability to play when their best is needed has happened. I don't know if we've seen the best of Georgia this year, but if there's any time that we're going to see it, the time is now. I take Georgia to win. I take Georgia to cover. I think Georgia's going to win by a touchdown in this game. I won't go as far to say it's more than a touchdown. Maybe 10 points is kind of my max in terms of this pick. Kobe, what say you?
Yeah, I think that you're right, and it's kind of like Dan said earlier when he talked to his friend Notre Dame. You don't have to be battle tested; you just have to be battle ready. I think we've talked about this Georgia team maybe as battle tested as any Georgia team that I can remember seeing in a long time. And I just think there's something about that in big games where you know the guy beside you has been there. He will continue to be there for you. I think that when things have gone wrong this season, Georgia's ability to bounce back and bring themselves back, I think you could have laid down and quit against Alabama and you didn't. I think you could have had some things kind of unravel at the hinges after you lose to Ole Miss, and it didn't. I think the same thing in this one. I think even if you're down 10-0, 14-0 at some point in this game, I'm not sure I'm going to count us out of it at all. I mean, you're down 17-0 against Georgia Tech, like you're saying, and battle back in that. I think not only will Georgia win this game, I think I'm at, like you're saying, at that 10-point to 14-point mark. I think Kirby's going to go out there and he's going to make a statement to kind of remind everybody that even with a backup quarterback, the machine he's built in Athens is built to win.
Well, Harrison just sent me a stat that Georgia is 4-0 against teams in the CFP this year. I know that's Texas, Clemson, and who's the other one, Harrison?
Tennessee.
That's right. Wow, that's pretty good. Notre Dame, what's their record against teams in the CFP this year?
Just 1-0, and that's just Indiana.
Yeah, well, there you go. Listen, I don't think this is very complicated. I've been wrong before, but if Notre Dame wins this football game, it would be the most wrong I've ever been in my entire life. I just don't see that happening. I think Notre Dame is a good football team. I think Notre Dame's a well-coached football team. I'll give Marcus Freeman has made major adjustments in his coaching from the day he took over at Notre Dame to now, and that's what good coaches are supposed to do. Kirby made horrible choices early in his coaching career, and he's flushed out of his system and become, arguably the best coach in football right now. I think Marcus Freeman's on his way. I think Marcus Freeman is doing the right things at Notre Dame. I just don't think Marcus Freeman's got this team ready to play right now. They're going to want to be ready to play. They're going to put the best plan they got to going together. But the problem is college football, more than any other sport, is about the Jimmies and Joes. The NFL, there's a draft, and they try to make sure that every team is equally talented. College football is not that way. I had a good friend who he's actually an NFL head coach right now, and Harrison knows exactly who I'm talking about. He said, the reason I love coaching the NFL is because it's me versus the other coaches who can put the best plans together because the talent's even. He said, I would get extremely bored coaching in college football because if you're Nick Saban or Kirby Smart, you have the talent advantage every single weekend. And he goes, and it's not really about me at all. So Kirby Smart still has the talent advantage. And I think that they're going to put together a game plan that protects their quarterback, and I think that he's going to be successful. And I think this game is going to mirror the 2021 game against Michigan almost to a T. I think it's going to play out almost exactly the same. And I don't remember what the final score of that game was. It like 23-15 or something like that. I mean, it was what do you remember? Anybody know that score?
Was it 34-15 or what was it?
Yeah, it was 34-7 until late, and they scored a late touchdown to make it 15.
34-11. 34-11.
I would not be shocked if the score is similar to that, and if the game didn't play out almost identical to that. That's my take.
There you go. Reminder, Dan's picks: Penn State, Texas, Ohio State, Georgia. Kobe has Penn State, Texas, Oregon, and Georgia. I have Penn State, Texas, Ohio State, and Georgia. Kobe doesn't want all of the universe to be united for the second week in a row, picking against us, picking Oregon there in the Rose Bowl. Guys, I'm hoping we get a great slate of games here. I think we will. I'm kind of with Kobe and what he said earlier. I don't know if we get necessarily a blowout, a game that's just totally one-sided. I think all these could and should be competitive. If not, we have some soul searching to do in terms of these auto seedings and how that's all done here. Dan, go ahead.
I did have one more thing to add about the Ohio State and Oregon game. Is I think what makes it really frustrating, or not frustrating, but like interesting, complicated, is you're having to pick between a coach who hasn't proven that he can win the big game yet, right? Because last year, Dan Lanning lost to Washington twice. And then you have another coach who's proven that he can't win the big games. So one guy who hasn't done it yet and a guy who's proven that he just can't do it. So which way do you fall? Yeah, like I said, I may have picked Ohio State, but, man, I really want Oregon to win that football game.
Just doesn't have the confidence to pick them. He wants them to win, but he just doesn't believe. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I don't. Sorry.
My favorite Dan Kiley quote, and this is why we do picks on this show. Dan says, "When I watch a football game, I can't help but pick a side." So we're making a pick a side on this show.
I'm sorry. It doesn't matter. It's not just football. You totally missed it. I can't watch a sporting event without picking a side. Hell, I could be watching curling, and I'm like, let's go Canada. Come on, baby. I mean, I can't not do it.
Have you seen Oregon Rose Bowl uniforms drop tonight? Have you given them a glance yet? Anyone?
Oh, my wife is going to be watching that game like her son's playing. I mean, she watched that cancer story with Dan Lanning on the ESPN did when he was on College Game Day. Oh, dude, she's like, it's over. It's a wrap. Like, Oregon is now 1A or 1B. It's Georgia and Dan Lanning. Like, she is all in on Oregon now. It's crazy. Like, she watched that game. The Big Ten championship game? I can't remember which one it was, but man, she was watching that game like Cannon was playing quarterback. I could not believe it. I was like, she is sitting on the edge of it, she yelling, screaming. I'm like, who is this woman and where did my wife go? I've never seen you this into a game in my life.
After all those years of Dan saying, "Man, I wish that we had some more people to watch football with me," he's like, "Man, I don't know if I want to watch football with her anymore." Oh, man. What a slate. We have college football on a Wednesday night. That's going to be kind of weird. After years of bitching and moaning about a Monday night championship game, we have college football on a Wednesday night. Then we have it on a Thursday night coming up. I guess that's not too weird. There are some Thursday games. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us tonight. If you've been here, make sure to like and subscribe. Yes, do it for more Dan rants. We appreciate you. If you're listening to us on podcast, we appreciate you for being here. Make sure to rate us 5 stars. We may just read the review out here on the show. To my right is Dan Kiley. Down on the bottom is Kobe Piers, the former Dawg himself that was in the building for the first college football playoff run ever under the Kirby Smart era. He was in the building for that. Gentlemen, thank y'all for being here. Thank y'all for taking time out of your day, out of your evening to do this with us every single week. Reminder, no show on Wednesday. Instead, you can plant yourself on the couch with your TV or whatever viewing device, and you can watch football all day long. I'm looking forward to it. I know y'all are. Happy New Year, ladies and gentlemen. We hope you enjoyed your Christmas. Dan, I won't wrap up.
You just shortchanged our man. He was in uniform for probably the most exciting Georgia game of all time, the Rose Bowl.
That is true. The Rose Bowl.
Live and in person.
We were there, watching it getting hammered off of our. Well, you weren't because you were like 12, but I was getting hammered, and this man was in uniform for that game. That is the only time in my adult life I have cried during a sporting event.
Really?
Oh, it's probably way too drunk, but
okay.
Kobe, remind us. Let's talk about the Rose Bowl game sometime when we have a chance on the show.
Yeah,
let's hear your perspective on the Rose Bowl game.
We can do just like a blank rant in a couple weeks. I was thinking the whole time, reminder, Wednesday night, plant your butt somewhere. But if you know Harrison Reno, for no reason under the sun do you need to contact him for any reason on Wednesday night, he will not answer.
Will not.
If you do not send him a text, don't call him. If someone has a gun to your head and goes, you got one phone call or you're going to die, don't call Harrison. He will send you to voicemail. He'll get back to you 3 to 4 business days minimum.
Man has been ghosting me for a week. Bro, he's acting like he's got shit to do. Bro, he could have answered the phone. Listen, from now on, I'm just going to call Kobe. I'm sure
Christmas break. Christmas break's a hell of a drug, Dan. It's a hell of a drug.
Mm-hmm.
Man, just having all the dirty laundry aired out here on the show. You know what, Robert? If you give me a call, I'll answer. Used to talk to Robert back in the day when we did cookout runs. But yes, Kobe's right. Wednesday night, if you got any plans, you want to invite me, just go ahead and RSVP no for me. I'll be watching football.
Oh, Robert, next time we're on your show, we need to do the over and unders for the Georgia season because we had them for the whole season, and I want to know how horrible I did.
Ooh. Well, there we go. Dan won the picking competition over there.
Yeah, but they did over.
I know what you're talking about. I was there for some of them.
Okay.
I'm curious who won
season.
that. I'm curious who won that one. Robert, I am not jealous of you having tracked down who made what pick. That is a long process. Having to go find the exact moment where they talk about those picks. If you haven't already, go subscribe over to the DGD podcast. Give them a look. They are doing their Sugar Bowl preview tomorrow night. You may just see our friends Kobe Piers and Dane Kiley over there breaking down that game. I won't speak for them. They can speak for themselves whether or not they will be over there. I'm sure they will. That should be a good one. Go give them a listen over there. Robert does a tremendous job over there on the DGD podcast, along with a friend Keon. Keon, we're gonna have to eat your last name eventually because it's really bugging me that I named these last guys' names.
He wants it secret.
He wants it secret. All right. Well,
he doesn't want people showing up in his DMs.
Hey, with that being said, we appreciate you for being here. We will be back next Sunday with our CFP quarterfinal reaction. Gentlemen, we may have to talk about doing a pop-up show at some point next week because that is a long ways away after the college football playoffs. Appreciate y'all for being here. Dan, I am getting your cue right now.
Go Falcons!